Hey everyone, it's Pamela Ferguson, and I wanted to come on today and talk about some of the different options you have as a child entering into college and what sort of options do you have. I like to think that there are three options, I would say, and I'll start kind of I don't want to say worst case scenario, but financially perhaps out of these, well really there's four if I want to think of absolute worst case scenario. The worst case scenario, I would say, go out of state, go to a small college that is not allowing for any sort of aid or scholarships. So I guess that would be the worst case scenario, especially where we're talking the very, very high expense of tuition. Most of the time, unless you have a very, very, very specific degree, you're going to be able to go somewhere more locally within your state to be able to accomplish the same thing. So I say four. I always kind of think of three. I have three children, and honestly, each of them chose a different one of these paths. As you know, there's adults. They are adults. I was recommending what they do, and they each chose three different options. So the number one is go to a state school. Depending on the state, you may have some options for scholarships within the state. Some of you don't. So staying within state, you're getting in-state tuition. So that's a help. And probably the tuition is, I don't want to say reasonable because it really depends on the state. More reasonable than maybe choosing a private college or one out of state. So one of the state colleges, there's usually a couple or several to choose from depending on the state. And this is the route that one of my children went. So she went to the state school, but even within state schools, there was variations in tuition costs. So she happened to go to the one that was the highest within our state. And she did have scholarships. So she was able to apply some of those to that. So you have options to do live in the dorm. Most of them, schools nowadays require it. So you live in the dorm, you get a meal plan, and then you deal with that. Depending on what you did prior to school, did the children work? Did you as a parent tell them, a part of your income needs to go to college funds? That's what we did in our house. We said, okay, this percentage you need to save away for your own college. Also, skin in the game. We wanted them to do that to make the importance of it. So that's the first option. And they may have to get student loans in that scenario. Go to school, she worked in summers or breaks, but not during school, right? Focus on education is what she did. What happens if that person decides to drop out? Student loans, they still have student loans. That's the unfortunate part one of the unfortunate parts of college nowadays, right? Even if you don't graduate, you might have student loans that you still have to pay off, and they kind of suck. So that's the first option, which is not dumb because you're not going to a private college. You're going to your state university. You get loans if you need them. Hopefully you saved enough to get there, working in the summers to try to help offset that money or offset the money, or also just spending money while you're at college. So that would say option number one. Preface it that I did talk about the private school, so let's not count that. Number two, I would say also choose a state school. I have another child that chose the different state school, so it was slightly less, instead of maybe $125,000 for a 4-year degree, it was $100,000. I know those numbers seem shocking, don't they? But still a little bit less. Hopefully maybe still having college funds, scholarships, and maybe even putting their working money away for college. But my second child in this example became an RA. So that means she started getting free housing and free meal. That is a game changer. I know not everybody can do it, even if they apply, so I get it. But I want you to know that that is a huge option. So even if you choose the same state school, try to think about other scholarships or other things you can do to help offset it. Because listen, like I said, even at $100,000, it's very, very expensive. So what I want you to do is think about becoming an RA. You can work on campus. There are all things you can do. The other thing that I did not mention in all of these scenarios is in high school, if they can do any sort of dual enrollment or even AP classes where they can get college credit. On my example of my second example for that child, they actually were able to have a full year of either AP or dual enrollment credit. So another huge thing. So only 3 years was needed for schooling, and they did the RA job. So that saved a tremendous amount. So we see about how small things change just between example number 1 and example number 2. My third child also had the third option. And the third option is, at least for the 2 years, to attend a community college. So depending on your state, you may have scholarships that cover the entire tuition for the community college. And if it's community, and if it's community local to your community, they probably can stay home. And they can also, so there's no room or board. So that's all straight savings. And the cost of tuition is either very low, or depending if your state offers scholarships, like within the state, it might even be free to attend that community college. So we're talking about the first one, well, not including the private schools. In the state schools, you know, full cost, room, board, the higher tuition. The middle one, like BNRA, you know, avoid that. Of course, you can't do that the first year, so it'd be after that first year. Avoid housing and food. Or the third one, where at least for the first 2 years, housing is avoided for, or housing is avoided with a community college, and also board, so food. That's all done still through you. So that's a huge saving. So 3 completely different paths. Now that third one, after 2 years, again, the community college is 2 years, so they would have to, at that point, choose to go to another school. However, hopefully during that time too, I recommend that they work while they're in school. It's fine if they want to get their feet wet and they might not want to start working immediately. And it doesn't have to be 40 hours or anything. But statistically proven, students who do work while in college actually do far better than those who don't. They have to be better at time management. They have more skin in the game, so they understand, like, hey, you know, I have to work to get this. And usually when you work for things, you appreciate that more. So, and my recommendation is all 3 of those options, they would be working. But we're still on the third one, and if they stayed home and they, you know, got your food, I should say free, I mean, you pay for it, but they, with their working money, they could be putting money aside for any, you know, the next 2 years that they're gonna have to go through. If the state offers scholarships, even that additional school, they can choose which school to go to, and since you only have 1 or 2 more years to pay for, the overall cost of education is much, much reduced. But having this video is about paying for college, I just wanted to do just a little side note to say that college is not the only path for everyone, right? You have to find, it could be a technical job, it could be, you know, one of the ones that has like a 2-year degree or an apprenticeship. Just know that that's awesome. As a parent, please don't force them to do something that they're not interested in or are, you know, just not good at. Not everybody is good to go to college, and they shouldn't. So there's no bad path in that way. All you want to do is try to make the best financial decision for you and your family. Feel free to reach out if you had any questions about any of those things. I have a unique perspective that 3 children that chose 3 different routes. So I really have experience with all of them, except for the private school that none of my children did that. So always feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Have a great day.